My name is Emily D. Keene. I'm 30F. I work as a logistics coordinator for a regional distribution company. It's steady, predictable work. I like structure, I pay my bills on time, I track my expenses, and I don't enjoy chaos bleeding into my living space. My boyfriend, Tyler, 27M, works in event marketing. We've been together a little over 2 years and living together for the last 14 months in a downtown apartment. Both our names are on the lease. Rent isn't cheap, but we split everything 50-50. At least that was the agreement. Tyler has a strong personality. That's the polite version. He's confident, loud, and very used to getting his way. Early on, I thought it was just ambition. Over time, I realized it was more about control. His ex-girlfriend Renee has always hovered in the background. They dated for 3 years before me. According to him, she was emotionally stunted and couldn't handle him. But her name came up a lot, mostly framed as proof of how much he'd grown since then. About a month ago, he started mentioning that Renee was having a rough time. Apparently, she and her roommate had a falling out. Then it became her roommate kicked her out. Then it became she was temporarily staying on a friend's couch. I didn't think much of it. Not my problem. Last Tuesday night, I came home from work, and he was sitting at the kitchen counter with his laptop open. And that expression he gets when he's already decided something. We need to talk. He said I thought maybe job change, maybe money, something normal. Instead, he goes, Renee's moving in. There's no discussion. It's temporary, so don't start. I actually laughed at first because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said she'd take the spare room. Said it would only be for a couple weeks. Said I should be mature enough to understand that helping someone in crisis is what decent people do. I asked when this was decided. He said earlier that day. I asked why I wasn't consulted. He rolled his eyes and said, because you'd make it dramatic. That's when I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration, and I don't live in places where I don't get a say. I told him calmly, if she's moving in and there's no discussion, then neither is my departure. He smirked like I was bluffing. I wasn't. I didn't throw anything. I didn't insult him. I didn't even raise my voice. I just asked him one more question. When is she moving in? He shrugged and said, Friday. It was Tuesday. He'd already told her yes. Apparently, he'd also told her that I'd understand because I'm reasonable. That word again. Reasonable. Translation, compliant. I asked if he'd at least told her the lease had both our names on it. He waved that off. It's fine. The landlord loves me. Don't make it complicated. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about helping someone. This was about control. He had decided something about our shared living space and informed me after the fact. So I said, okay. He blinked. I said, if she's moving in Friday, I'll be out by Thursday night. He rolled his eyes and laughed. You're being dramatic. No, I said I'm being consistent. You said there's no discussion. I agree. He didn't think I meant it. He went back to his laptop like the matter was settled. The next morning, I called the leasing office. I asked what the process was for removing myself from a joint lease. Turns out it required both parties to sign a release and for the remaining tenant to qualify solo or with a new co-signer. Interesting. I didn't tell Tyler that yet. Instead, I rented a small moving truck for Thursday evening, non-refundable. I also called a buddy of mine who has a spare bedroom. Asked if I could crash for a few weeks. She said yes without hesitation. By Wednesday night, I'd boxed up most of my stuff from the spare room. Funny how quickly that room stopped feeling neutral. He noticed the boxes and asked what I was doing. I told him exactly what I said I would. He scoffed. You're really leaving over this? No, I'm leaving because you told me I don't get a say in where I live. He tried flipping it. So you're punishing me for helping someone. I told him if he wants to help his ex-girlfriend, that's his choice. But I'm not sharing an apartment with her. He snapped and said I was insecure. Maybe, but I'm not homeless and insecure at the same time. By Thursday afternoon, he was annoyed more than upset. He still believed I'd calmed down. Then at 6 p.m., the truck pulled up outside, and that's when he realized I wasn't negotiating. The truck pulling up changed the tone immediately. Tyler was standing by the window when he saw it. His expression shifted from irritated to confused. You actually rented a truck? Yes. For what? To move my life. He followed me downstairs, still acting like this was some kind of performance art. The driver handed me the keys. I signed and started loading boxes. At that point, he switched tactics. Emily, stop. This is insane. She's just staying in the spare room. I didn't respond right away. I carried my desk chair down the stairs instead. That's when he finally said what he really meant. You're embarrassing me. That was interesting. Not you're hurting me, not I don't want you to go. Embarrassing because apparently he'd already told Renee I was fine with it. Probably framed me as supportive and evolved. While I was loading the truck, he tried calling Renee. I could hear him pacing inside, explaining something in a hushed but angry voice. By the third trip down, he came outside. She doesn't have anywhere else to go. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I told him calmly that I wasn't stopping him from helping her. I was just removing myself from a situation I didn't agree to. He crossed his arms and said, You're overreacting. It's just temporary. Temporary doesn't mean optional for me. Here's where it got interesting. I reminded him that both our names are on the lease. If Renee was moving in, that would technically require landlord approval. Subleasing without consent violates the agreement. He froze for half a second. She won't care, he said quickly. Maybe, maybe not. I didn't threaten anything. I just stated facts. By 9 p.m., my half of the apartment was empty. Couch, TV, bed frame, kitchen table, all mine, all gone. The place looked different, immediately smaller. He stood in the middle of the living room and said, So what, you're just abandoning me? No, I said, I'm stepping aside like you asked. He didn't like that phrasing. As I drove away, he sent one text, You'll regret this. I didn't answer because here's the thing. He didn't factor in. Removing my name from the lease wasn't optional for him. It required his cooperation, and Friday was less than 24 hours away. Friday morning, I woke up on my friend's couch to 12 missed calls, all from Tyler. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Instead, I called the leasing office. I explained that I was vacating the unit and wanted to formally begin the process of removing myself from the lease. I also asked hypothetically, what happens if an additional occupant moves in without written approval? The property manager didn't even hesitate. That's a violation. Immediate notice. Interesting. I thanked her and hung up. About 10 minutes later, Tyler finally texted instead of calling. Renee's here. We need to talk about the lease. I didn't respond. Another text. The landlord says we both have to sign something. Still didn't respond. Then came the shift. Why would you call them without telling me? So he knew. I had done exactly what I said I would. I stepped aside, but I didn't leave loose ends tied to my name. That afternoon, I sent one clean message. I'm removing myself from the lease. I won't be financially responsible for a third occupant I didn't agree to. I'll sign the release once you qualify solo or add her legally. Then I blocked him. Phone, social media, everything. Not out of anger, out of clarity. If he wanted non-negotiable decisions, he could have them without commentary. An hour later, Renee tried to call from an unknown number. Blocked. Another number. Blocked. I wasn't doing a three-way debate about an apartment I no longer lived in. By Saturday morning, mutual friends were texting me. Apparently, Renee didn't qualify on her own. Her credit wasn't great. And Tyler, on his income alone, didn't meet the building's ratio requirement without a cosigner, which meant the landlord had given them two options: submit updated paperwork properly or face lease termination. And since I'd already initiated removal, my exit was in motion. Tyler left a long message with a mutual friend asking her to pass it along. I was sabotaging him, that I was being petty, that real partners don't run at the first sign of discomfort. I had her reply with exactly one sentence. Real partners don't move their ex-girlfriend in without discussion. After that, I heard nothing directly, but I did hear something interesting. Renee wasn't thrilled about the paperwork. Apparently, she thought she was just crashing for a bit. Turns out, non-negotiable feels different when the lease agreement has signatures on it. And for the first time since Tuesday, Tyler wasn't the one controlling the situation. He was reacting without me in the room. By Monday, the pressure shifted entirely onto him. I wasn't hearing from him directly because he was blocked everywhere, but mutual friends were providing unintentional updates. Renee had officially moved in Friday night. Mattress on the spare room floor, 2 duffel bags, big energy about fresh starts. Apparently, she walked in expecting calm. Instead, she walked into a leasing compliance email. The landlord had sent formal notice requesting updated occupant documentation within 72 hours. Failure to comply would trigger a lease review. That's corporate speak for you're on thin ice. Tyler tried spinning it at first, told Renee I'd overreacted and made things messy on purpose, said it was just paperwork, but but paperwork has numbers attached, and numbers don't care about tone. He needed either to qualify solo or have Renee added legally. That required her credit check, income verification, and application fee. Renee didn't love that part. From what I heard, she thought she was staying a few weeks, not signing into a year-long financial obligation, which means they had their first real argument within 48 hours of cohabitation. Funny how crisis bonding energy fades when leasing terms appear. Midweek, I got an email from the property manager directly, not from Tyler. It stated that Tyler had submitted documents to remove me from the lease and retain the unit with an additional applicant pending approval. Translation: he needed me fully gone to stabilize his side. I signed the release digitally that same day. Clean final, no commentary. That apparently shocked him more than anything. He'd expected me to stall to leverage to negotiate. Instead, I stepped aside exactly as promised. But here's the part he didn't calculate. Once I was off the lease, the security deposit conversation shifted. Half of it was legally mine, and the landlord doesn't redistribute deposits automatically when tenants change midterm, meaning Tyler now had to come up with my portion to keep the unit intact. Renee, according to a friend, did not volunteer. By Thursday night, I heard they had had a full-blown argument about money. Non-negotiables suddenly required negotiation. Meanwhile, I'd moved my things into a small studio across town, signed a 6-month lease, quiet building, no drama. Block numbers stayed blocked, but word travels. Apparently, Tyler told people I ran, which is interesting because I didn't run. I just refused to share space with his ex-girlfriend, and now he was learning that declarations don't override contracts. Real life signs paperwork, and paperwork doesn't smirk. By the second week, the tone shifted from confident to strained. I didn't hear it directly. I heard it through the grapevine. Apparently, the landlord approved Renee conditionally. Her credit wasn't great, but Tyler pushed it through by agreeing to a higher security deposit and signing a stricter addendum about timely rent, which meant two things. 1, he had to cover my half of the deposit immediately. 2, if rent was late, even once the landlord could move to terminate. That's a lot of pressure for a temporary arrangement. The first rent cycle hit faster than expected. Tyler had always been fine splitting rent with me. Predictable income, automatic transfers, clean math. Renee's contribution less predictable. From what I heard, she was between contracts, freelance design work, a few invoices pending, that kind of explanation. Tyler started venting to mutual friends about how stressed he was, said I'd left him in a difficult position, said I could have at least given him more time. More time for what? To let his ex-girlfriend move in gradually. Meanwhile, I was settling into my studio. It wasn't flashy. It was mine. Quiet mornings. No tension in the kitchen. No wondering who's coming through the door. About 3 weeks in, I got an unexpected call. Not from him, from the landlord. Professional tone. Simple question. Have you fully vacated the premises and removed all belongings? Yes. Good. We've had noise complaints and wanted to confirm you're no longer an occupant. Noise complaints. Interesting. Apparently, Renee had friends over. Late nights, music, balcony smoking. The building had always been strict about that. Tyler used to complain when upstairs neighbors made noise past 100. Now, he was the one getting written warnings. The part that really shifted things. Rent was 2 days late that month. 2 days under the new addendum that triggered a formal notice. Tyler, according to a friend, was furious. Said the landlord was being unfair. Said I'd set him up for failure. I hadn't done anything. I removed myself from a situation I didn't consent to. Real life did the rest. By the end of the month, I heard Renee was already talking about needing space. Said the pressure felt heavy. Said living together was exposing compatibility issues. Compatibility issues? They've been roommates for 4 weeks. Apparently, non-negotiable decisions feel empowering until the consequences arrive. And the consequences had his signature on them, not mine. By month 2, the situation stopped being dramatic and started being predictable. Tyler's social media shifted first. Less thriving energy, more vague quotes about resilience. A couple posts about how growth requires uncomfortable transitions. Translation: this isn't going the way I imagined. From what mutual friends told me, Renee's between contracts phase lasted longer than expected. The freelance invoices didn't clear as quickly as promised. Tyler ended up fronting most of the rent that second month. That's when the arguments got specific. Money exposes dynamics fast. He'd framed her as someone he was rescuing. That narrative works when it's short-term and romantic. It feels empowering. It feels less empowering when utilities are due. Apparently, he started pushing her to contribute more structure. Budget talks, job talks, timeline talks. She didn't like that. She'd come in thinking temporary refuge, not joint financial accountability under a stricter lease agreement. And then the landlord did something subtle but effective. After the second late-to-rent notice, they required automatic payment enrollment under Tyler's account. No more manual transfers, no more. I'll send it tomorrow, just direct withdrawal. Renee, from what I heard, took that personally, said it felt like she was being treated like a liability, which technically she was. The noise complaints didn't stop either. A warning letter was posted on their door one Friday afternoon. Building policy is strict. 3 violations can trigger lease termination. Funny how there's no discussion. Sounds powerful until you're the one getting official notices taped to your door. Meanwhile, I was stable. My studio lease was quiet. Rent paid early. No drama, no emergency moves, no shared kitchens with unresolved history. One evening, about 9 weeks after I left, I ran into Tyler downtown. Pure coincidence. He looked tired, not messy, just stretched thin in a way that doesn't show up in photos. He tried to keep it light. So are you happy now? That question told me everything. Not are you doing okay? Not I miss you. Happy now. Like this had been some strategic revenge. I told him calmly, I wasn't trying to win anything. I just refused to live in a situation I didn't agree to. He said Renee and I are working through things. Interesting phrasing. Working through as if this was still a project. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The lesson wasn't about Renee. It was about what happens when someone says there's no discussion in a shared space. Real life responds with its own non-negotiables, and they come with due dates, not opinions. About 3 months after I moved out, the situation finally tipped. Not dramatically, not explosively, just predictably. The third rent cycle under the stricter addendum hit. And this time, it wasn't 2 days late. It was 5. Under their agreement, 5 days triggered a formal lease violation review. From what I heard, the landlord scheduled a meeting, not a friendly check-in, a compliance meeting. Tyler apparently went in alone because Renee had a client call. That detail told me everything. The landlord laid out the numbers, 2 prior late payments, ongoing noise complaints, multiple warnings documented. They gave him 2 options: bring the account current immediately and commit to 0 further violations, or begin voluntary termination to avoid a formal eviction process. Voluntary termination sounds polite. It's not. It means you leave before you're forced out. Renee, according to a friend who still talked to both of them, did not handle this well. She blamed him for overreacting by adding her legally instead of letting her stay quietly. He blamed her for not stepping up financially. They were both technically right and technically wrong. That's what happens when 2 people bond over rebellion instead of responsibility. By the end of that week, I heard they'd broken up again. Apparently, she said the living situation felt suffocating, that he was becoming controlling, that she didn't sign up for pressure. He reportedly told her she should be grateful he helped her when no one else would. Gratitude doesn't pay rent. The final piece came quietly. A mutual friend mentioned Tyler was moving out. Voluntary termination signed. Deposit partially forfeited due to violations. Renee went back to couch surfing. The apartment he declared non-negotiable. Gone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt confirmed. When someone makes unilateral decisions in a shared life, they assume control equals stability. It doesn't. Control without agreement just accelerates consequences, and consequences don't care who started the argument. They just collect signatures, and his were on everything. About a month after that, I met someone not intentionally, not as a rebound mission, just through normal life. His name is Miles, 28. He works in healthcare administration. We met because he moved into the unit across the hall from my studio. The building is quiet, mostly professionals who mind their business. The first conversation was about a misdelivered package. The second was about coffee. What stood out immediately wasn't chemistry, it was tone. When we talked, nothing felt like a power play. No performative confidence, no testing boundaries to see what I'd tolerate. Just normal adult conversation. About 3 weeks into casually seeing each other, he asked a simple question. So what happened in your last relationship? I didn't dramatize it. I just said my ex made a major living decision, without discussion. So I removed myself. Miles paused and said, That makes sense. No eye roll. No implication that I was insecure. No trying to analyze me into being the villain. That reaction alone felt foreign. One night, we were cooking at his place, and his ex came up naturally in conversation. He mentioned she had reached out recently about grabbing coffee. You know what he said? I told her no. It didn't feel respectful to where I am now. Just matter of fact. No speech about being evolved enough to handle complex emotions. No framing it as noble maturity, just boundaries. I didn't realize how tense I'd been about shared space until I wasn't. One evening, he asked if I'd ever consider moving somewhere bigger once my 6-month lease ends. Notice the phrasing, asked, not declared. And when I said maybe, but we'd talk about it properly, if that time came, he nodded and said, "Of course." No smirk, no non-negotiable. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual circles that Tyler was staying with a friend temporarily. Renee was out of the picture again. The apartment was back on the market. Non-negotiable had turned into non-renewable. I don't hate him. I don't regret leaving. If anything, I regret almost staying to prove something. Because here's the quiet truth. The moment someone tells you there's no discussion in a shared life, the discussion is already over. You just have to decide if you're staying for it. I didn't. And now, for the first time in a while, my living situation doesn't come with surprise roommates. Just doors that open when both people agree to turn the handle. 6 months after I loaded my life into that truck, everything had settled. Miles and I didn't rush anything. No dramatic declarations, no sudden merging of lives, just consistent weekends, shared groceries, quiet conversations about work and future plans. When my studio lease came up for renewal, he asked again, "What are you thinking? That's it." No assumption, no pressure, just a question. We sat at his kitchen table and actually discussed it. Budget, location, commute, privacy expectations. It took 45 minutes. No one rolled their eyes. No one declared anything non-negotiable. We decided to sign a new place together. Bigger neutral ground, both names on the lease, clear terms about finances, simple adult stuff. Meanwhile, Tyler's situation wrapped itself up exactly how these things usually do. He moved twice in 3 months. First to a friend's spare bedroom, then to a smaller apartment further out of downtown. I heard Renee resurface briefly, then disappeared again once money and responsibility entered the conversation. The landlord relisted the original unit within weeks of his termination. New tenants, clean slate. One afternoon, I got a message request on LinkedIn. Not from him directly, just a short note. "I miscalculated. I thought you'd stay." That was it. No apology, no ownership of the unilateral decision, just acknowledgement that he assumed I wouldn't leave. I didn't respond because that was always the core of it. He didn't think I'd leave. He thought I'd argue, adjust, tolerate, negotiate. He thought non-negotiable only flowed one direction. But the moment he said there's no discussion, he removed the only thing that makes cohabitation work: agreement. I didn't fight his decision. I matched it. He said, "She's moving in." I said, "Neither is my departure." And that was that. Non-negotiable isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's paperwork signed without hesitation. It's keys returned without a speech. It's a truck loaded while someone watches from the window thinking you're bluffing. I wasn't bluffing. And the funny part, the only thing that truly wasn't negotiable in the end was reality. Rent gets due. Leases get enforced. People either qualify or they don't. And when someone tells you there's no discussion, sometimes the only response is to remove yourself from the room entirely.